Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. Yeah, it's been a pleasure having everyone on board, and just like to sort of start with, actually, my name is Mohammed Misbaudin, and I am a senior analyst working for Affinity, and we're particularly working with Microsoft's data stack. And recently, I've been part of the community in Pakistan here, organizing all the MVP sessions and having them on board for all these sessions that they did, all the knowledge that they could contribute. So it's been great to have them on board. And today's session, what we are focusing on is particularly on the Microsoft data platforms. I have been also involved in some of these data initiatives in the past with Microsoft, and I think you could feel free to, you could go on to my profile and look at some of the past experience I've been part of. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speakers for today. So our speaker for today is Miguel. So Miguel has been a BI enthusiast, and particularly Power BI enthusiast, and he has been an MVP for the past 3 to 4 years, an active contributor in the community, and he has about 20 plus years of experience. He's a veteran in BI space and the data space. So he'll be sharing with you all a lot of key tips and tricks and how to tackle challenges in the Power BI space, particularly in the DAX space when it comes to tackling those sort of challenges. And so yeah, I'm gonna give the floor to him. And so, yeah, Miguel is with us. So I think Miguel will be able to join us. Are you able to connect now, Miguel? You can share your screen.
Yes. Hello, everyone.
Are you sharing your screen?
Yes. Yeah. Can you see my screen? Are you able to see my screen?
Let me.
I have it on my presentation, so.
I think I'm just gonna add you in as and your, the camera shot needs to come in, so okay. That, yeah. So, yeah, go ahead, Miguel. Floor is yours.
You can see my screen, right? So,
yep.
First of all, I want to thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be talking to this group and to have the opportunity to share the knowledge, some of the knowledge I have with this community. As you said, this session is about DAX challenges and how to tackle them. I'm Miguel Félix. I'm a BI specialist at DevScope, and as you also referred, I've been a super user on the community since 2018, and a Microsoft MVP since 2019. Hopefully, I will get the renewal this between today and tomorrow. We'll receive the renewal. Hopefully, let's see. But I've been working with Power BI since day one. So we are talking about 2015. At the time, I was in the finance area, and then there was a need to develop reports and visualizations and so on, and everything was done in Excel, and BI took it to the next step. So that's how I got to enter in the BI, especially in the Power BI world. So with my past experience in finance. So this session is mainly for beginners and intermediates, for us to understand some of the quick things that the DAX has and that may lead us to some errors or to some miscalculations, because as what what is being said around DAX is that DAX is simple, but it's not easy. This is a post that we have here from Alberto Ferrari that says 7 reasons why DAX is not easy. The main ones revolve around the context and the way that the filter context or the row context interfere in our calculations, especially when we are using calculate, summarize, and so on. There is always confusion about those types of questions, and in the community, as I refer, there are always returning questions. These returning questions are of several types. So we have questions about the filters context. We have questions about incorrect totals, more than one relationship in the same table. Also, some things about the dynamic axis that currently has reduced significantly, because with the field parameters we can already do it out of the box without the need of any DAX, but it's easier. But mainly this is the main aspects that we will be trying to cover. Some of this, not all of them of course, but some of this in this session. So if let's go to Power BI, and let's start over here with a simple one that I think that gives the motto around why DAX is not easy. And if we just do a simple metric, and over here, this data is from 2011 and 13, is the Contoso sales sample. I took it 2 or 3 years ago, and I didn't update it, but for the purposes, it's enough. But if we pick up the sales or the units, in this case we have over here the units of the sales by continent. If we pick up and we do a new metric based on the calculate function, if we do a new metric based on the calculate function, having a filter in this case on the year, so a direct filter on the column, as I say over here. So let's call it sales 2012, for example. If we do a calculate sum of sales quantity, where the calendar year equals 2012, and if we pick up this value and put it on a visualization, you will see that this calculation is pretty straightforward, and the result will be exactly what we need. So over here we have 11 million. Let's put this to a table to better view the number. Okay, a quick format. And so as you can see, we have the 11.2 million units, nothing special. And if we add also over here the continent name, everything gets calculated properly. So nothing unusual. So everything is correct. The measure is working. But however, if we decide to add the calendar year to this table that we did, I changed it to a matrix, but if we add it over here, as you can see, everything starts to get a little strange. So we have the 4 years over here, 2010, 2011, 12, and 13. So, and all of them have the same values. Why is that? When we are using calculate, this syntax that we have over here, it's the same as applying a filter all of the calendar year and then applying the filter for the year equals 2012. So although we don't use the filter all, it's implied that when we refer a direct column into a calculate function and we put a value to filter that specific column, the all function is applied to the measure. This, as you know, if we do all calendar, of course, every single year we will step over the row context. In this case, the row context there is the year, and we will return. Doesn't matter which year we are. It will always pick up. Let's say for 2010, we want to return the sales for 2012. and for 11, 12, and 13. And the only year that is correct is 12 in this case. If we want just to overcome this and just to show, so I want to have this, but just to show the sales of 2012, we need to, instead of doing a direct filter to the table, we need, for example, to do a keep filters of the calendar year equals 2012, and this will return just the year that we have selected. In this case, we don't have to have any slicer, anything, and we are forcing it to have the year equals to this. Just be aware that there are many ways to have this calculation done. The calculations, the formulas that I'm using here may not be the most accurate ones. It's just some examples of what we can do. But as I said, DAX is simple because as we can see, we are just using a sum, and then with a calculate, we are changing the filter context. But it's not easy to get why we are getting this result when we do the simple column versus year input directly. So be aware of this small thing on the calculate that will impact a lot in this. Another thing that usually appears in the community is the fact that we have incorrect totals in our values. Let's take out this average over here, and if we pick up this column, this table over here, as you can see, what I did over here was to make a sum of the values that are above 225 million. This conditional formatting currently is at a month level, and we only have month, and the year is coming from the slicer. But if we add the year over on our matrix, you can see that part of the values are not considered. For example, over here in January, we don't have any sales for 2011 and for 2012 that are higher than 225 million, and so on. And for example, over here in October, it's only on 2012 that we have these values, or April and May. But if we take a closer look, so this is working as we want. So for these values within the months and within the years, this is working as you want. But if you take a closer look at the matrix, we can see that at a row level, we are getting 377 millions, in this case in January, but there are no values on the rows. And over here we have 2.6 million, but if we check the values that we have over here, we have 240 to 30, so we have around 750 million, 800 million. So the totals are not matching. Why is that? Because when we do this type of conditional sum, what happens is that since DAX is based on context, when we are at the row level, what we pick up is all the data from January 2011, and we calculate the sum for that value. When we pick up the sum for that value, it's lower than 225, so it's a blank value. If we go over here to the total line, what happens is that it picks up two values. And let's just really quickly go over here to the, sorry, it was not tabular added, to the DAX Studio, and we can check these values in a very simple way. So if we do an evaluate of, let's do a summarize of the calendar table by calendar, and then by the year and by the month, calendar and by the month, calendar and by the month. Okay, let's put the month name. Now, if we add over here a column with the sales, let's add the sum of sales. Then it's, if I'm not mistaken, let me just check. I think we are picking up the sales amount. Let me just, okay, it's the sales amount. Yes, correct. Sales amount. If we just do this simple validation. Now, if we pick up over here the values for, let's just do over here a small filter really quickly. Let's put in per calendar year equals in 2011 and 2012. So if we pick up these two, that was the years that we have on our table. If we just format it over here, if you pick up January, so January, it's these two. As you can see, we have 193 million for 2011, so does not match our 225, and we have 183 for 2012, so they do not match. But as we were saying, when we go to a total row value or to a total column value, this context is not calculated looking at 2011 and 2012. This is looked at an overall value. So what we are picking up here is the total for the calendar table in an overall value. So for January of both years and 2011 and 2012. The same happens over here when we pick up the column. We are not picking up just the ones that are above 225 million. We are, first of all, we do the sum of all the months in 2011, and then we get the 3.1 million value. So 3.1 is higher than 225, so the result is we have the full result. How can we overcome this? We can overcome this by giving it context, by adding the context of the table to the measure. So let's just add a new measure over here. And over here, as you can see, I just did a small table where we pick up the calendar, and for each calendar year and for each calendar month, we added the sum of the sales. So let's do exactly this, but in the measure. So let's do a corrected sales amount, and this will be equal to a variable that is a temp table. And over here, let's calculate the summarize of the calendar year over here. Let's start by the calendar year, and then we will add the months, okay? But let's start by the year. And then let's add over here also the next step of this is the total sales value. And this will be our conditional sum that we add on the previous step. So the one that we saw that was higher than 225. If we pick up this, and now we do a return on this, and using the sumX function, all the functions that end with an X are iterator functions. Iterator functions means that they are going to pick up the context of the table because they are always done on top of a table, and they are picking up each line. And in a simple way, what they are doing is they pick up this first value and they save it aside. Then they go to the next line and they pick up this second value and they save it to the side. And it continues iterate row through row. So in this case, April of 2011, 2012, and so on. And in the end, does the sum. So if we do this, so the sumX of our temp table, that in this case, instead of having over here the month name, we will have only the year, correct? If we do this, and we do the temp table, and if we, over here, the expression will be this total sales value. Total sales value. Now, if you pick up this measure and we add it to our calculation, let's see what is the result that we are having. As you can see over here, sorry, I have an incorrection over here. This one, conditional, I selected conditional formatting and it's conditional sum. Okay. This conditional sum let's see what we have over here in terms of values. So as you can see, what happens is that the values stay exactly the same. They stay the same except on the row level that we have. So as you can see now, we are having the 276, that is 2011, and when it sums up 2012, there is no value, so the sum is only 276 million. If we go to the bottom part, we have the 257, it matches over here. The 227 also matches, so the sum of these two are the 485. So we already corrected the line value, so now let's correct, because as you can see, the columns are still incorrect. So how can we add this? Now we need to add the months, because when we are talking about this matrix, the columns are the months. So if we add on this summarize the calendar and the month, you can put the month name or month of the year, doesn't matter, it's just a question of context. If we redo this, now as you can see, the values on the, let me just format this really quickly so we can have an exact, if we format this really quickly, as you can see, the values in line within the cell values are exactly the same, so there is no difference. Within the columns, there are already differences that we saw, and within the rows and within the columns, we already have the calculation, as you can see. If we sum up all of these values, 1.2 million, so it's already matching. So what happened was that this sum X, and let's go back over here. What happened was that if we do over here also the measure that we added, that is the conditional sum, we can see perfectly what is happening. So as you can see, what happens over here is that we have the same table with the exact same values. So for 2012, we have values for the last months, and the first 3 months are blank. And for 2012, we have only the last semester. And then, as I said, the iterator goes row by row and starts summing up. So when the filter context is 2012, it just sums up these values. When we are talking about 2011, it just sums these values. When we are going at the month level, for example, July, is just summing up those two, that returns the correct calculation within the line and the value. So this is very common to have when we have conditional calculations, so sums, averages, and so on, that people don't get the full result as they need. In this case, one of the options, because there are several options, one of the options is to create a temporary table to then apply the sum X, and with that temporary table in place that we have, we can then make the calculation correctly. Okay. One of the other questions that also happens a lot in the community is the fact that we have 2 dates in the same table. And in this case, I have the sales table that has over here a date key that is matching the relationship, the active relationship with the calendar table. Let me just do a new one so it's better, it's more visible. So we have an active relationship over here with a date key. So this returns our sales within a specific period. So it's this table over here that we have, okay? And this column over here is coming from the calendar table. So everything that I filter out over here goes to this table, and we have our match. We also have in this table, in this sales table, we have also order date, and this order date gives us the date when this sale was ordered. In this case, we created an inactive relationship. Okay, we will talk a little bit better in a few minutes about this. But what happened is that if I want to present both of these values in the same table, I'm unable to do it. Why? Because in the context of the active relationship always overcomes the other relationship, meaning that I cannot, if I do a calculation, and let's be aware that we want to pick up always the sales amount. Okay, it's always the same column I want to pick up. When I add in the year from the calendar table, I always get the same result. Doesn't matter what I do. The only option I have is to pick up the order month and year. In this case, it was a column that I created on my sales table. That gets, as you can see, it's just a format of the sales order date. And that picks up for that date the order date. I also added over here a synchronization of slices, so for both of them to be equal, but one is picked up from the order date and the other one is picked up from the date. What happens over here is that if we want to have a single date to overcome this, we need to use another DAX query. In this case, we create a new measure. It's a very simple one, but sometimes it's tricky to understand what is happening, and there is a lot of questions about this.
I have a question, Miguel.
Yes.
So how are you sort of merging the order date and the other date dimensions in a single sort of chart? Like
that's where we are reaching. That's what I will be showing. In this case, as I said, since we have both dates and I want to pick up the exact same. I want to pick up the exact same column that is sales on the same chart. There is no possibility using it directly. Why? Because as referred, the active relationship always passes through, is the first one that is used. That's why when you try to add more than one relationship between two tables, the first thing you get is that this is not possible because there is already an active relationship. This will be inactive, or turn the other one off and turn this one on. So over here, let's call it order date sale value, okay? And let's do, again, the calculate function, one of the most used in Power BI. Let's do the sum of the sales amount. So this is, it's the same. And over here, let's do use relationship. When I do the use relationship, and as you can see, this specifies an existing relationship to be used. So basically what happens when I do this, I tell Power BI that this calculation goes from the relationship that I tell him, and not by the one that is by default on the model. So in this case, I want to have a relationship between the order date, the sales order date, and the calendar date. Be aware that it's the date key, if I'm not mistaken. And be aware that the order is irrelevant, okay? In this case, on the user relationship, there is no because the order is already on the relationship when we created it. So if we do this and we pick up this order sales date and we put it in the first table that we have, as you can see, what is happening now, and let's be aware that this column this table over here is based on the order date, month and year. As you can see, we have an exact match between this column and the first table. So as you can see, 159, 195. If you go over here to 2013, February, 194. And on the bottom, as you can see, we have the 5.1. That is the exact same value. Doing this, we can, for example, duplicate this and create a line chart. Let me just put in the month over here. It will be more visible. And now we can also put in the order date over here. And now we can compare how the order date and the sales are progressing during the year. So this use relationship function, what it does basically is comes over here, picks up the relationship that I tell Power BI, in this case that I tell DAX, and activates that relationship. In that specific calculation, this relationship of date key, that is the first one that we have, does not exist. It only exists this one. So this is the main one that starts to appear. So that's how we can now do this, because the order date sales is picking up the inactive relationship and making it useful by the user relationship, and the sales amount is picked up by the normal context of the relationship that we already have, and everything works properly. Okay, it's a tricky function, because sometimes people don't understand exactly how this works, because they don't understand why the values are matching. But be aware that I also saw people doing this, that if you don't have this relationship created, this will not work. Okay, you need to have a physical, let's call it like that, a physical relationship between the tables. If you try to do it on another column, and we can just change over here if I do this, that is not happening. This will give an error, and it will say that the relationship does not exist. So we need to give a, you see, user relationship can only use two columns reference in participate in a relationship. So we need to use the one that is existing. Okay, so these are some examples. Don't know if we want to go to Q&A, or we have time for another one.
I think so far it was a great exercise to start with. So I think we are at the 30-minute mark, 32-minute mark. Yeah, so that I think we could take some questions, but I before that I think it's very important to address some of these functions that are not commonly used. I think you picked up something unique at this stage, and I just thought that there were some of these functions that you were trying to sort of put in, that order date and the order date and the current date relationship. A lot of people don't really use that approach and try to sort of drill down or slice and dice those analysis. So it was good to understand there are different approaches to this, like, and have a chart set up which would give us different sort of different trends. Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah, and yeah, I think if we have more questions, I think we can just sort of take down. I think I might have some other questions from somewhere. Okay. So I have a question saying, so someone is asking that how should we start if you were to start on sort of DAX, and we are developing our skills on DAX. What would be a good starting point? Should it be from Power Query point of view, or should it be directly on Power BI and go and dive into DAX directly?
So that's an interesting question, because of one thing that you said. Power Query is one thing and DAX is another one. Okay, Power Query uses M language. That is a different language from DAX. Some of the things that we do in Power Query are passed on to the, let's call it, front end of Power BI. Okay, so everything that we do in Power Query goes to the front end of Power BI. What we do in DAX doesn't go to Power Query. Okay, two different languages, they don't communicate between each other except by the link of Power BI, or in Excel. If we use Power Pivot, it's the same thing. We do the query transformations, then we use Power Pivot, and we can use DAX. Okay, different languages, different sets of skills that are needed. Both are complementary. DAX is more similar to Excel. So the first approach that people get with the common measures that they do, the sums, the averages, and so on, they are very similar. But the big question is when we go to what we saw over here, that when we try to use the calculate function, or when we try to change the filter context or the role context. For that, we need to have a very clear path on what we are doing. I advise persons to take it slow, first of all. DAX, we are always learning DAX. I recommend that you look for some courses online. There are several. Let me be a little biased and tell you that the ones from Alberto Ferrari and Marco Russo from SQL VI are very good. The books that they wrote, I think it's the Bible of DAX. It's one that we should read every year, especially they have a single chapter dedicated to the calculate function. So, and that chapter, it's said among people that work in the BI community that should be read every year, because every year you'll find out something new. So, but first of all, you need to understand really well this the context transition. So, just a small thing, as you saw in the first part that I showed you, the calculate applies a filter all, and we are already changing the filter context. So don't try to learn it as you learn Excel. That is mainly by doing it. No, it's not that easy. I also did that path. I have to be honest. I also did that path, but there was a time where I said, okay, I cannot continue on this path. I need to take a more focused approach, and I took some classes and read the books. I'm still reading the books. There are a lot of information coming out there, and be aware that there is not only a single option to do things in DAX. This is also very. There is a super user in the community that is Greg Zeckler. He tries to do almost everything without calculate. So just using the X functions that I talked about, the iterators. So there are different approaches. I already saw lots of solutions in some posts that I answer. It's amazing to see how people look at this and how versatile the language is, because some go from some X, others go to the calculate, some pick up some other things. So, but pace yourself. Don't try to learn everything at once, because this language is always evolving. And for example, this year there already were launched 3 or 4 new formulas that allow you to do more complex calculations of several financial data, for example. So
great. Thank you so much, Miguel. Yeah, I think it. We are living in a time where it's constant learning, right? So it's just it keeps keeps evolving. So
there is one good thing with Power BI from the start. That is always very community based. So you have a lot of videos, lots of tutorials online. There is also currently a lot of courses. I cannot evaluate if they are good or bad. There are a lot of them, so we'll not try to go through that path. But there is a lot of things online, so try to select things wisely and to understand especially focus on this part of the context, because it's one of the main things that DAX really is tricky, because a simple sum is easy to validate, right? Okay.
Great. So just gonna gonna be So I think it's been great having you over, and it's great to have you on board. Thank you so much, Miguel. So everyone who's in the session, feel free to join these sessions. These will be happening every every 2 weeks of the month. So there's more coming. It's not just Power BI. There's more platforms coming. There's also other platforms such as Azure Data Lake, as well as Synapse Analytics. We'll be focusing more on the broader side of things. Miguel, being an expert in Power BI, I think feel free to connect with him on LinkedIn and reach him for any advice or anything, or maybe questions. He's a go-to guy to understand Power BI and DAX. So there's more coming soon in the upcoming weeks. So looking forward to have more attendees in this session and be part of the Tech Day Pakistani community. So thank you all, and we will see you in the next session. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for having me. Thank you all for attending. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.